Good evening and welcome to the Odyssey. This is the latest film in our Postcards from Europe strand. My name is Paul Sutton and I'm going to say a few words by way of introduction to this film. So what we're going to watch tonight is a film called La Haine, directed by Matthieu Kassovitz. It was made in 1995, so that makes it now 25 years old. And it's just been re-released by the British Film Institute over here in the UK in order really to celebrate the brilliance, I suppose, of this film. Interestingly, it's a film that I think in many ways is incredibly relevant today. I mean, it has a relevance and has continued to have a relevance since it was made, but it feels particularly apposite in the current climate, especially the Black Lives Matter protests that are happening globally, obviously, which began in the United States. But many of the issues that are at stake in this particular film are also those that are being highlighted today. And I suppose whilst the film was very effective in highlighting some of those kinds of issues, it's also a reminder as we celebrate 25 years of the film that actually many of those issues remain as problematic and as unresolved as ever. So the film is in a sense a response to actual events that occurred in Paris. I think it was in 1993 that Kassovitz witnessed a sort of an incident of police brutality, which led to the death of an individual. There were also subsequent protests and had been a degree of rioting that had taken place. The period we're looking at really is the sort of dawning of the Chirac era in France. And the film, in a sense, is a response to that kind of violence and a response to the way in which the lives of particular inhabitants, immigrant communities in Paris felt they were being treated. And whilst Kassovitz himself very much comes from a middle-class background, both his parents were involved in the film industry, he lived in central Paris, he'd actually formed all sorts of connections with individuals living out in the banlieue or the suburbs, which is where La Haine is set. So it was a milieu that was very familiar to him. And in fact, you'll see when you watch the film, many of the people who inhabit the space that we see represented in the film, it's a suburb about sort of 30 kilometers outside of Paris. Many of those inhabitants were actual people rather than actors. But the film stars a kind of trio of individuals. So we have Vince, played by Vincent Cassel. We also have Hubert, played by Hubert Koundé, and Saïd, played by Saïd Taghmaoui. Now, of all of those actors, whilst both Saïd and also Hubert have gone on to have some degree of career, it is both, I suppose, not unexpected and also somewhat depressing that of all of those, it's Vincent Cassel who has gone on to have the most sort of illustrious career and has become something of a sort of global star. That said, his performance is really powerful in the film, and he is a kind of key figure, I suppose, in terms of the sort of powerful energy that we see in the film, the kind of bottled up anger and rage that the film kind of gives expression to. So the film is interesting visually, as well as in terms of the subject matter it tries to capture and explore. It is, as you will see, a black and white film, although actually it was originally shot in colour and it was turned to black and white in post-production. But that gives it a kind of noirish feel, gives it quite a sort of gritty edge. And I think the black and white is used very effectively in the film. It's also notable for its use of the mobile camera, the use of long takes, and it has some quite sort of self-conscious and quite flamboyant special effects. One of the things also that we see, I think, is a playing out of a kind of, different kinds of spaces in the film. So we have the space of central Paris versus the space of the banlieue, the suburb. And our trio of main characters, Vince, Hubert, and Saïd, we see them kind of most comfortable in the space of the banlieue. This is the space that they inhabit, the space they're familiar with. When we see them in Paris, it's a very different experience for them. So it's, in a sense, very much a film that is built around the performance of these three key characters, and we follow them over a period of 24 hours. And it's partly where the film kind of gains some of its power and its tension. And so it is very much about these individuals and their experience of life in contemporary France back in 1995. And it is a film that has resonated subsequently. It's a film that generated in France at the time a huge amount of debate, and one that was well received from many of the immigrant communities in France, who perceived it as a film that went some way to accurately kind of represent their lives. It also kick-started, I suppose, a particular movement in terms of the banlieue film or the suburb film. We'd already had in France, from about the mid-80s onwards, the rise of what was known as the Beurre film. So films that were exploring the lives of immigrants living in France, living in large cities, and their experiences of that. And in some senses, Kassovitz's film kind of builds on that already existing set of films. And it's partly because of its international success, the fact that the film had got taken up around the world, taken up in the States, and been so successful that it's had, I suppose, the legacy that it has, and the power of its message has endured and has existed well beyond the confines of France itself. So I hope you'll find this film fascinating to watch, and as powerful a film as I found it when I first viewed it back when it was first released. So please enjoy, and if you'd like to have any kind of conversation or discussion around the film via Facebook, then please do so via the Odyssey pages. Okay, enjoy.